Welcome, everyone, to Stories Across the Table podcast. I'm your co host, Steve Ramona. I'm with the wonderful Bridget Cook-Burch, my other co host. Beautiful soul. And she's brought on another beautiful soul that's going to talk about near death experiences, probably a little podcasting, but just talking to her for 10 minutes. She's just a wonderful person, has a big heart and a great story and a great background. And before we get started and get Bridget to get this show off the road, I'm going to do my gratitude for the day. You're awesome. You're an awesome inspiration to those lucky enough to know you. Now, audience, go out and know people. I know it's not good English, but get out to know people because you can make an impact in anybody's lives. With that being said, let's bring our guest on. Heather, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today. You two are both beautiful souls.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bridget.
Well, I was just going to say thank you. And we're so excited because here you have been a podcaster for a number of years. We'll dig down into your story, but it's beautiful that you are allowing yourself to get your own story out into the world. And I find there is great power in that inside of a person and in creating more visibility for what you're doing. And what you're doing is so extraordinary, Heather. I can't wait for our guests to find out.
Thank you so much. And I have to apologize because there's some people that are working right outside my window. So you let me know if that gets too loud. And
no, it's perfect. The audio is good.
Okay,
all right, Bridget, let's kick it off with our great question.
Hey, fantastic. So, Heather, what is the story of your life that has been the biggest story, the most impactful story that has rippled all the way to today?
Oh my gosh, I think every life has lots of themes and lots of seasons that we go through. Certainly, I started out with a fascination of, I think, just the mind and also our spirits. Even as a kid, I remember kind of having this fascination of wanting to learn more about all of it. And then I ultimately went to school for both a journalism, which I initially started. I had a journalism degree. And then secondly, a few years later, I'm back to school for meteorology. And those seem very far removed from some of the spiritual things I was interested in. But of course, in some ways, it's all connected because it's all about curiosity of wanting to know more about what is out there. And so while I was pursuing these other fields, I was always very intrigued by near-death experiences. And my first college paper, or at least it was in the first semester, was on near-death experiences. So I've been fascinated with that topic for a long time. But of course, back then, it wasn't quite as accepted as something that people really openly talked about a lot, that they were intrigued by this. And then, of course, there weren't podcasts, there weren't ways to go about being able to tackle this topic and learn more and share it with other people the way we are today with podcasts like this that you are doing and podcasts like mine as well.
Absolutely. So even as early as college, you were intrigued by this, but you went into meteorology. So tell us about why the passion for meteorology of any subject. I would love to hear, like, what sparked your curiosity, that love of learning?
I think initially went in journalism, and I was working in local TV doing news, and I don't think that really fit my heart. I wasn't somebody that was ever confrontational, that sort of thing. And I found myself very intrigued by what meteorologists were doing. And so I just found I became more and more interested of it, just talking to people I worked with, that sort of thing. And I decided to go back to school for that. And I did, and it was just a wonderful experience. And then I had a few jobs in local TV and eventually went to the Weather Channel and worked there. And I worked on their morning show for, it must be at least a decade, with my cohort, my partner, Marshall Cease, who was a great guy. And we had such a fun time doing that morning show. And then after that, I ultimately I moved into the digital aspect of it, where the Weather Channel, you can get information on your phone now. And that was such a great place to learn because that's ultimately what allowed me to then do my podcast. And I was able to take some of that knowledge. But of course, along all this way, I was studying near-death experiences and I was reading every book that came out. And then when the internet came out, I could read more and more stories that were out there. And then podcasts came along and I just kept thinking about wanting to do something special. Kind of, you yearn for something, but you don't know quite what it is. And I remember yearning to just do something on my own, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. And it really probably took a decade before that fully formed into the idea of combining my passion for knowing what is out there, in the spiritual realm, and then actually taking the leap and starting a podcast. And it's kind of a scary thing to do, to stop working in the real world and then just to do something like this. But my husband kind of said, if you're ever going to do it, you better do it now. And that's true. I just needed to step out and do it. And that's sometimes the hardest and the scariest thing to do when we have kind of a tugging at our heart or a dream. That first step can be kind of hard, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, and seasons is a word that I love that you mentioned. It's so powerful because we are in different seasons. Could be a week, could be a month, could be a year. We don't know the frequency of those. I study Stoicism. I read the Daily Stoic, and they talk about death all the time. And I talk to people that fear death. I've actually people on my show. What would you tell the audience or people thinking like, I'm really scared of death? And how's near-death experiences change your mindset?
A lot of people come to my channel because they've lost a loved one or they're afraid of, what's going to happen or what happened to their loved one. Even they lost a pet and they're wondering, will I see that pet again? And so there's so much reassurance when you listen to person after person after person saying, hey, wait, this isn't the end. I saw these amazing things. I often say that hearing one story is really nice, but when you listen to story after story, I think it really becomes very life-changing because you start to really realize that there's so much more beyond what we could have even fathomed. When we have these ideas of who God is, of what heaven is about, the more you study these, you're like, whatever you can think of, whatever you can imagine, it's so much more amazing. There's so much more than we could ever fathom that's out there. And, this life, this earth, and all of human history is really just a speck of what has been created and what we're able to someday explore and enjoy more. And it's exciting to study this topic and to hear. And I'm surprised again and again and again by people, sharing these just incredible stories and these loving stories and just how amazing it is. And I think that hopefully is what the audience is getting out of it too. And a lot of people have reached out in the comments and said, you've helped me so much to get over this fear when I lost my loved one. So hopefully it's doing some good.
Oh, I
Bridget,
think
that's
that's
amazing, isn't it, Bridget? The transformational stories you tell me all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And to be able to get it out in such a way, one of the threads that I see through you and your stories is this element of kindness. Even when you were talking about you didn't enjoy being on newscasts as much because you're not confrontational, and kindness and service seems to be a running theme. So to be able to do something so spectacular in terms of these stories, I know they did a study in certain universities about what happened to individuals when they read more of these stories, and they found that their anxiety was less, their trepidation and fear about everyday life, much less death, had lessened tremendously. And so I think about this compilation of over 240 podcasts that you have done on near-death experiences and transformational spiritual experiences. It can't help but open doors. But to get back to the kindness, I would like to ask you, is that part of what you love about this? Is the sharing of these is very different from broadcast television and
Yes.
all of the stories that we're hearing, in the news today. How does this lift you? How does it support you? And what do you hope it does for others?
what it's done for me and what I hope it's doing for other people, and I believe it is it's made me want to be a kinder person. It's made me more empathetic toward others. And of course, the big umbrella over that is love. And you
Mm,
and so many other near-death experiencers that I've talked to express this love, both love in the heavenly realm and the importance of it here on earth. And also, I think what's interesting, Bridget, when I listen to you, for example, when you were on my show, you just exude that love. And I think it's really neat because you can see how these experiences have changed people. And by seeing that change and by, experiencing love just by listening to you, I think people really kind of get it. They grasp how life-changing these are and how true and important that love is in how all of us live our lives.
Yeah,
so
there's
powerful.
I think a bigger picture than if we're just headed out into life and our head is down and we go to work and we come home and we binge watch Netflix and see the headlines on TV. We might not even know or understand or feel like the bigger love and kindness that is available to us. So I think it's beautiful that you pull these stories out of different individuals and that there is an incredible pattern to them. So do you
It's
think you'll be doing this for a long time or
We'll see. I mean, I'm loving it now. Life could change, who knows, maybe things will change in life. So I know I won't be doing it forever, but I'm loving it now. I hope to do it for several more years. And I guess we'll kind of just see how it goes. But I really do think that whether it's me or somebody else, uh, you guys, for example, putting out these positive stories, it's so important because, when you do talk about today's news and today's social media, it's not only negative, but it's very confrontational and it's very got you. And it doesn't matter, you know, whose perspective you're seeing it from. Um, there's just not a lot of love and compassion always shown, especially for people that are different than us. And I think what I've learned from these near-death experiences is that, we have to have love and compassion, not just for those that agree with us, but people that we don't agree with. And certainly, Bridget, you've, learned that through some of the books that you've written and some of
Yeah.
these people that are very different than you and you think you have nothing in common, but ultimately, um, you know, many people still hold these qualities within us that probably gets buried by our life experiences. But within there, we all have this kind of human compassion that I think does get buried sometimes in life, and when sometimes it's harder to see it in somebody. But just that's what we're called to do to not just love the easy ones, but to love the hard ones and to extend compassion to all of them.
The world needs
Mhm.
kindness more than ever. And you mentioned with
Yeah.
social media. So I love
Mhm.
what you ladies are talking about. Here's the other thing, too: love, anybody can do it. I mean, there's no monopoly on love. I mean, the
Mhm.
person in prison to the most successful Elon Musk, there's love there. It's just how
Yeah.
much they show it and let it out. So I love this love and empathy coming out because in business, I think it's missing too, and in the world. Do you have a story? I know you've a ton of them that you could share with us about a near death experience that made you smile and just really got you?
Well, I will say that Bridget was one that really touched my heart.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that was because of Bridget, how you just expressed that love and that gentle nature that you have. So I think it went beyond your story, which was fascinating, but you could also feel it through you. So that's certainly, one that has always stood out to me. I think too that I'm really fascinated by ones that are so different than what we maybe traditionally thought. You grow up and you think of, I remember thinking, oh, it would be so boring to be in heaven because I don't like to sing. And then we have to sit there and sing all the time. And I remember
I
that just, it's so boring to me, playing an instrument and, or, you just realize there's so many layers to what is to come for us. And some of it may be the beauty and simplicity of very pastoral scenes of earth-like areas that are just utterly beautiful to levels we don't have on here on Earth. But then there's also these amazing, things people have seen out in the cosmos, or some people have had the ability to just watch creation and different things taking place, and just these amazing beings they encounter, and this incredible love that is always there. Every person I've experienced, no matter what, has always talked about the love. It's never been absent from one of my stories that I've heard a guest come on and share, which just shows what is most important.
Yeah, that's a powerful message. It gets you, Bridget, right in the heart, right in the middle of the heart.
Absolutely. It's such an honor, when you talk to someone who has been so transformed. But it's also so amazing to recognize, like Steve said, this great feeling of love is available to every single one of us, no matter where we come from, no matter our background, our situation, rich, poor, it doesn't matter. We have access to this. It's just a matter of opening to it. I didn't know before my near-death experience that I had that actual access. So it was one of the things that taught me so much. So if I can spread any of that love and kindness, like I just sometimes it's beyond words, but I feel that. I'd love to know, like, are there any changes your husband has seen in you that from, this inception of this idea to this full fruition of bringing these stories to light? What has he mentioned that he's seen inside of you?
I think that what he has seen is how I light up when I talk about, the people I've talked to, or just these experiences. And so I think he knows how much joy I find in talking to people and then sharing those stories as well. And I find joy too when I will read the comments and somebody has said how much it meant to them, or, this is something they really needed to hear, or how it's changed them. So I do think that you can tell when people just light up over things they're really passionate about. And he notices that. And I'm sure others do, because the minute, somebody brings this up, I'm like, oh, and it's just so fun and exciting to talk about this with people that are interested in it, because this isn't everybody's cup of tea. And, sometimes they go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're not amazed by, all of this. But, not everybody is. And it's kind of like, my husband might sit down to watch golf on a weekend or something, and I may not, or he does yard work and he thinks it's like so much fun. I might go out there and help him, or I might sit down and watch a little, but it's not as much of my thing. And I guess we each have our own passions, but
Yeah.
definitely this is my passion. And I think he recognizes that it's brought a lot of joy to me.
To each
Oh,
his
I'm
own, my
grateful.
dad.
Yeah.
To each his own. My dad always told me, just if they're not passionate about it or want it, that's okay. And that's the beauty of being human. We can decide with our freedom is near-death experiences. Bridget, real quick, I've got to ask people listening. I know people are going to be listening because they go out to a wide audience that have been involved in a near-death experience, whether themselves or a family member, friend. What's the first steps to take so they don't go down a black hole of depression or any of that negativity?
If that happens to them, or
Yes, to them, or we can't forget near-death experience is going to happen if it's a wife, the husband, it's going to affect them, family members, friends, because they're going to go, hey, Steve and Mona just had near-death. I just almost died. What do I do? Because that's a mental health thing, good or bad. They've got to deal with it mentally.
yes. Well, and it's interesting too, because I've spoken with so many, as Heather has, and she probably even has a greater depth to this. I've spoken to at least 50 or 60 that are, wanting to write a book, or working on their books and things like that. But in the beginning, it's so sacred and then to try to express it to someone out loud, especially if they're not a believer at all or different things, it can be really debilitating, and it can create depression, because oftentimes in those experiences, like your perception of the world, of, as Heather was saying, of universes or creation or love or other things, is so transformed that you're like, can't everybody see this? Doesn't everybody know this? And they don't. But some people have been called crazy. Some people have been told, don't you dare tell anyone, they'll lock you in an institution. There have been people who've, unfortunately, they've lost relationships just because it's such an in-depth truth to them that they can't deny it, and they don't want to deny it. But for many people, it's as Heather mentioned, like, it's the empathy grows, the understanding of other people and where they may be coming from. Have you found that, Heather, when you've talked to people? It's like they can honor many other paths, but they have learned to honor their own and to speak that truth.
Yes, and I do think that it is hard for some people to come out. It's hard for people to talk about things if somebody doesn't believe them, or they kind of like, yeah, whatever. And so, yeah, I do think it's very hard. But I think one of the things that many people hear when they have these experiences is how important it is to be authentic. And so ultimately, I think people try to be braver. And I think when they see other people doing it, and when they connect with people like you, or they, hear podcasts, or they go to the IANS conference, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and they meet other people, I think then they realize it's okay to kind of step out and to share these things. But certainly, so many of them then just lean into wanting to really be more loving and expand that love. And we're all humans, so we all make mistakes, whether we've had these experiences, whether we've learned about these experiences. But I think they just sort of help keep realigning us to, just wanting to do a bit better.
Well, both of you ladies are wonderful. I just love, because you just taught me something in case I run into this, or it happens to me, because that was my first thought when I asked the question was, am I an outlier? I think when you said crazy, people look at me crazy. I'm like, that never, type of thing. That's not good for the mental side of things for people. As you said, depression. And we want to avoid that. It was, if something happened, God's decision was you're going to have a near-death experience. It should be a positive. It shouldn't be a negative. And you guys are so wonderful. That's why I love doing podcasts. I get to learn as well. Bridget, we're coming to the end here. Did you want to ask anything of Heather? She's been such an incredible guest.
Oh, absolutely. Heather, what would you like the listeners and the viewers to know about you, about your podcast, about anything that you're working on right now that they could just be excited for?
Well, I would invite everybody listening to check out my podcast. It's called Beyond with Heather Tesch. I think you'll find that I'm a very curious person, so I ask questions that I like to think my audience wants to know. And I do really think about, will my audience, what would they want to know? And I do try to dig in a little bit more. So hopefully people find that. And and then I just think it's so important to keep spreading this message to about being loving and kind. And I feel like sometimes I'm a broken record, but I just think it's it is something that people really learn from these. And I love getting that message out there, because I think our world needs it more than ever. We've always needed the message, but certainly now we need to get that out. So I do that podcast. I have a new episode out, every week. And I just love the people I get a chance to meet. I get to meet both of you here today. It's just been a wonderful opportunity for that. And I just encourage people to check it out. And not everyone might be for you, because, I always tell people I don't have an agenda when I do it. And so, you might hear a variety of people sharing, different experiences. And while there are commonalities in these experiences, they are all very different, but they all have that common theme of love. Every single one of them, no matter
Heather,
what they're like.
I apologize for interrupting. You're getting me going. So excited. And can you do me a huge favor?
Sure, Steve.
Keep breaking those records.
Oh,
Keep talking and breaking the, just keep story after story, because I think Bridget, you said, or somebody said it multiple times. You know, it's that old story. You're at school, you know, you come home, you tell your mom this, and you go, "Oh, that's not true, mom," or "I'm not going to do it." And you go to school and your teacher says it and you do it,
yeah.
because they hear it multiple times. And again, God bless you
You
for
mean
what you're
when my
doing.
husband, I can tell him something and he ignores it, and
There
then
you
one of
go.
his friends says the same thing, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we got to do this."
That's
We
me.
got to do this thing.
Oh, you
Yeah.
guys nailed it. You nailed it. Heather, we're going to end with this fun question to really get to know you better.
Okay.
Me and Bridget are going to reserve a table at your favorite restaurant.
Okay.
Okay. We
Mhm.
want you to invite, besides us three will be there, three other
Okay.
people who've been influential and made a difference in your life, whether dead or alive, doesn't matter. And for me and Bridget, we love to know what food you're going to be ordering for the table.
Well, I like seafood and I like a good steak. So
Mhm.
that's probably what I'd be ordering. It's so hard to try to narrow it to people that
First
I
ones
would.
that pop in your head is what I tell people.
Well, certainly there are a lot of people that are in the near-death experience community that I would love the opportunity to get to know more. I always enjoyed my time with like Vinnie Tolman and, but a lot of these people I've had, it's so nice because I have had the opportunity to talk to them. If you go back historically, of course, it would be fun to talk to Jesus and bend his ear for a while. I'd probably have a million questions. Um, Really, anybody who sits at the table that has had a near-death experience, I'm always fascinated to talk to, no matter who that is. And I'm certainly thrilled that the two of you are at the table because it's fun. I love having deep conversations, so it's fun to kind of dig into some of these things.
Heather, you're so right. It would be fun just to see people in person. It's, this is great. The virtual is the world, but in
Yeah.
person, it's much better.
Mhm.
As always, Heather, you've made such an impression on me. I know Bridget, all these years you've known her. I know people listening would love to learn more about you and connect with you. How can they do that besides the podcast?
The podcast is really the best way to do it. I do
Okay.
have a Facebook page and they certainly can check it out, but I, I really just go to the channel. If to find it, you could probably just type in Heather Tesch and you'll find it, and that's Tesch or Beyond with Heather Tesch. I'm sure you'll provide a link to in the description to my channel.
Yep.
Just go check it out. And
Absolutely.
and even though there's not a new episode out every day, I've got so many past episodes to watch and just start watching them. And I promise you, if you keep watching them, you're going to learn and expand. And I always say, sometimes you need to listen to them, even one episode a few times, just to really soak in because there's always so much value in each one. And they each have just such wonderful stories and inspiration to all of them and wisdom. There's just so much to them.
Thank you, Heather. Any last thoughts, Bridget, before I close this out?
Just that Heather's podcast has become part of my power hour a couple days a week, just because of the caliber of guests that she brings on. And we chose her for a reason for our number one podcast, and that is we're starting off with these stories across the table that represent so many different points of view. And sometimes in society, we're getting, narrowed down to one point of view and it has to be right. And I
Mhm.
really think that the opportunity for humanity right now is to listen to varied points of view and to really get down to this gut level humanity and love. And so, Heather, thank you for being our first guest.
You're
And
welcome.
you're going to want to check out her podcast. You're going to love it.
Thank you so
Bridget, thank you
much.
very much. Just go ahead, Heather.
Just thank you for having me on. I mean, what an honor to be able to be your first guest. I'm grateful that you thought of me, and I just wish you guys the best of luck because I know you're putting out there such positive messages, and you're both such beautiful people, and it's really a blessing to me to be able to be here. So thank you.
God bless. Thanks, Heather. And that's why I have a great co-host. I didn't even think about our first because you only have your first one time. And Bridget, thanks for mentioning that. And audience, here's your call to action. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Stories Across the Table, or Beyond with Heather. Is that right? Did I get it right? Yeah,
Yes,
Beyond with Heather.
with
Because
Heather
here's
Tesch.
why. beyond with Heather Tesch, and we'll have in the show. But here's why, and I've done 900 shows. This is 901. And what I've learned is we can impact people, because people go, oh, subscribe, you're kind of being, promoting. No. If you subscribe to hers, mine, or anybody else's, you're going to be able to impact people, because you're going to listen to this show and go, I've got a friend who's had a near-death experience, and you get to share Heather for 10 minutes. And what an impact she's made on me. Can you imagine the impact you're going to make on your friend or your family member? Mm-hmm. And did you give them a gift? We need more of this in the world. With that being said, Heather, Bridget, and I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast or listen to this podcast. And we'll see you all in the next episode of Stories Across the Table. Have a great day, everyone.